Christians Who Drink Whiskey and Their Open-Minded Friends is brought to you by Funny&Amen. If you want to support this podcast and haven't seen any of our other content, head over to our page at patreon.com/funny-and-amen. For just $2 a month, you can watch our podcast a whole week early and see exclusive stand-up comedy that can't be seen anywhere else. For only $5 a month, you'll have access to the podcasts, the stand-up, and behind-the-scenes content, exclusive first looks at new comedy projects we're working on, and bonus, we're going to send you a t-shirt. Head to patreon.com/funny-and-amen to see all we have to offer. That's patreon.com/funny-and-amen.
You're watching the podcast.
You're watching the podcast. Funny&Amen's F&Amen, Christians Who Drink Whiskey and Their Open-Minded Friends podcast. I'm Kevin Hackenberg, your host. This is Derek Sander.
That's
Derek,
me.
I'm excited. Today, Derek recommended that we pick up some JD number 7 Jack Daniels
Gotta do it.
Tennessee Sour Mash Whiskey. So let's do it.
Let's do it. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Screw top, love it.
Very sophisticated, the plastic screw top.
Cool.
Thank you, sir.
There you go. We can refill that if you need to later. Cool. Derek, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I've
All right,
never
cool.
been here before.
What Derek may be joking about is that for most of the podcast, Derek is right over there,
Yep.
behind the camera.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Derek, for running the show
Absolutely.
here at our podcast. And now, for over a year, you have been my right-hand man,
Yeah.
right-hand person.
We're not going to assume anything.
Not going to assume anything. I've never seen inside your pants. Or had a conversation about how you identify.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say he's been our camera person. He's been a phenomenal AC. I forced him to do sound, which we're all doing everything in a podcast. You know, the budgets are gone, so we're doing everything ourselves.
Yeah.
And thank you, man. You've been phenomenal. So on the screen behind us, Derek, we met about 2.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And Derek says to me, I want to be a cinematographer. And already Derek has, in the past year and a half, shot a couple music videos. This is an image from our friend Isaac Ford's band called Church Pants that Derek shot their music video. What's the name of it called?
It's called Bad Cop, Bad Cop.
Bad Cop, Bad Cop. Yeah. And tell us a little about Bad Cop, Bad Cop, because this is a great video, great concept.
Yeah, it was a video about an interrogation, like a police interrogation, and they're kind of torturing them. But all the torture methods are silly and stupid, and that's basically as much as I can tell you without spoiling it, even though it's
Google
not very spoilery anyway.
YouTube Google look up, whatever you're going to look up, Church Pants, Bad Cop for that one. Mm-hmm. And this one is one you just filmed this past weekend with our friend Chris Pierdomenico. Chris, by the way, at least until we started this podcast, was our social media host. I think hopefully he's still with us. He's such
all
a
the
great
people who like Facebook and email blasts and all that.
Yeah, if you're one of the 1,000 people a week or more that like and share our Facebook stuff, thank Chris Pierdomenico, because Crispy we call him, because he did that. And so Crispy, for the 21-day film festival, created this short film. What's it called?
It's called Safe Passage.
Oh yeah, Safe Passage. What's it about?
Yeah. So it's about the guy on the left here who is he suffers from ADD and
OCD as well.
OCD, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
ADD,
A something.
He can't even concentrate on how OCD he is.
Yeah, exactly. He has suffers from OCD, and he is headed to a job interview. So we follow his journey to and at the job interview.
It's a great I've only seen the rough cut so far, but it's it's really some unique angles that kind of help the audience feel a little OCD. You feel like you want to like fix things at first, and so it feels like almost like the director and the cameraman, have like, oh, I wish they would have. Yeah, and I think that it like really worked. It really kind of like talk about the process of two of your first cinematography projects.
Well, I mean, as a newer person in the business, with these projects, Isaac that was his first thing that he directed, and Chris, it's one of his first. So we're all kind of learning, and we're still. Obviously, I think you would say you're still learning, but
no,
you've peaked.
I've peaked.
You've peaked.
It's just downhill now.
Yeah.
I mean,
but trying to learn, and especially in Isaac's case, it was kind of putting to test every single thing I knew, which wasn't a lot, because this was last August, so over a year ago. I was with you full time for 3 months.
Yeah,
which is not a long time. So
some people it's too long for some people.
So that was fun. It was fun trying to basically have this set where Isaac was directing it, who wrote it. He was directing it as well, and we had been working for a couple weeks. He came up with the concept, and then we were just kind of fleshing out ideas, what the different torture methods would be, all that. And then on set, being the only two who had ever been on a film set is also fun, because then you have to kind of, in a day with no budget and no AD and nothing, you have to figure out how to get a 4-minute video out of it.
Yeah. To get, as my friends in IQ would say, significant high impact things done. How to get shit done.
Yeah.
So, it's great, man. So tell us a little bit about, I know this story, and we joke about it a lot, but tell us how you found your way. So I found you when we met when you were you were in college, right?
I was in college. It was after my freshman year. It was the summer after my freshman year. Isaac, who this music video is a mutual friend. Yeah. So I've known him for a couple years, and I was going to school for media production. So obviously he knew I was kind of in that mind space and wanted to kind of get into it. And a couple months before, we were at a concert talking about it beforehand. And he's like, oh, I have this guy that I can introduce you to. And then a couple months went by.
I needed some painting done. And a house cleared out.
Exactly. So I emailed you, came in, hung out, did a little bit of freelancing that first summer, and then
were you on a film set with us? What was your first?
I was on Dust Nuggets, or not Dust Nuggets, Traffic Opera.
Traffic Opera with Andrew and Sue, who were on another podcast. They did a musical, and it was great.
That was my first week. So on Monday I came in right here and edited one of the Funny&Amen things, and then you were like, oh, you should come to this shoot on Saturday.
We totally trademarked and copyrighted, but I've been trying to figure out the perfect way to launch this thing for Funny&Amen called Segregated Sundays. Just making fun of like the racial divide that happens on Sunday. And funny enough so we shot this like test pilot. It was terrible, absolutely terrible, and wasn't ready for prime time. And I needed somebody to edit it, and you came in and started editing it. What's hilarious is still when you call me, it says Derek Sander, editor of Dust Nuggets. I'm getting old enough. I need to like of Segregated Sundays.
That's really funny.
So now I'm getting that a place where I'm like, if I meet you once, I try to like type some little note about you. So I remember. So when we talk again, I'm like, who the hell is this person? And
I do that all the time.
And now we work together every day. And I'm like,
that guy.
Now it's like
not the other Derek Sander.
I'm like
It's that one.
Oh, that Derek Sander.
One,
Oh, and he's still around. I'm like, he edited that for me, and he came back. He was desperate for a career.
So that was summer after freshman year. And I went back to school. Went back to Salisbury in Maryland. and I was part of the TV club. Was president of that for my sophomore year. I worked at a TV station, the local news station.
You told me a story once about being president of the TV club.
Right.
Like, remind me of, like, there was,
I don't know. There's so much.
There was, like, wasn't there something that, like, you were the only person who knew how to, like...
Probably. I mean, there were probably 20 people in the club, and there were, like, 3 of us who really know what we were doing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even that we knew what we were doing, it's that we knew that we didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is. It's like, we know that we don't know what we're doing.
You have arrived at wisdom when you know you don't know.
Yeah, and the problem was we didn't really have anybody who could be on camera, so I was the anchor. So I ended up anchoring our news segments.
That you produced and directed.
That I partially produced. My friend Sean, it was the producer. He put together everything, and it would have really been bad without him. But the team of us put everything together, and it was just like every week I'm like, I think that might be why I'm here. It's just because I can't do this anymore. It was at the point where it's just like, as a sophomore in this program, I'm already bored. And I get bored easily where I'm like doing the same thing day in and day out, and obviously that's just life, and sometimes you got to do that. But I was just like, if it was somewhere maybe more well known for media or film or whatever, maybe I'd still be there. But it was kind of just one of those things. And talking to you, the end of my sophomore year, months leading up to it, I was like, I wanted to freelance and all that stuff, because that's what I assumed. I knew I wasn't going to go to school anymore, or maybe go to community college or whatever I was going to do, but I knew that I would probably come back and freelance because we had talked about it. And then in March, we shot You Came for Funny&Amen. And then those couple months after, we're talking, and you're like, well, I need somebody full-time. I'm like, well, I don't have anything else better going on, so let's do it.
But you had school.
Well, at that point, yeah, but we were talking about it. I think I remember a phone call coming home. I know exactly where I was on the highway talking on the phone. You're like, well, I need somebody full-time. And I was like, oh, cool, because I don't have anything else. And I think it was pretty close to the end of the year, and my plan was not to go back. Yeah.
So you're a college dropout.
I am.
A successful,
I am a very proud college dropout.
Successful and proud college dropout. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, interesting. I have 2 good stories about people that dropped out. I've told you this story. I'll tell the audience. My friend, Dave Matson, who had a business degree, showed up as a friend of a friend, friend of a former intern, showed up at my door, worked with me a couple days, and then he was going to, after business school, he got business school to kind of make his parents, like, happy, and then he was going to go to film school, like a 2-year film school, because that was his passion. Amazing. The guy's an amazing writer and amazing director too. And he came to me after working for me like 3 days on like a corporate film and a commercial and a really terrible short film. He came to me and said, "Hey, I had my first day of class. Can I buy you lunch?" And I was like, "Interns buying me lunch? What? I've like reached like, it doesn't get any better than that."
Yeah.
And
I don't even buy you lunch.
Yeah. So yeah, but I peaked. So he said at lunch, he said to me like, "Hey, I think I learned more with you in those last 3 days and those 3 jobs. I'm going to learn in this whole program. I got the syllabus today, and I'm not really looking forward to the next 2 years." And I'm like, "What are you spending on that?" He's like, "I'm going to spend like $10,000 on this program." He's like, "What should I do?" And I'm like, "Well, you have a business degree. You should be
do some math. Yeah.
You should be able to figure this out by now." And that was actually turned into a great short film that's online. You can check it out. It's called "Oh My Captain" by Dave Matson. And he had a degree and dropped out. You don't even have a degree.
Yeah.
Maybe you're smarter. I don't know.
Hey, who knows?
I don't know. Time will tell. No. So what's your experience been being part of the film industry the past year? And you can talk about working for me too. Like, I mean, there's no holds barred. Oh no.
Oh, good. No.
I do pay you. So.
Yeah, that's a risky one. No, I'm just kidding. It's been interesting. I mean, for myself, creativity has always been my number one thing. Like, if I'm not being creative, kind of going back to the school thing, I was like not being creative, and that was part of the boredom and part of just like being anxious about being in a space where I'm just like, I have good friends and I would hang out with people, but it was like, what am I doing? I'm just so bored, and I was finding any way to be creative. So coming into the industry, obviously we do a lot of corporate stuff. We get to do cool independent stuff and creative, fully creative stuff, which is fun. But even day to day, you can still find creativity, which I obviously really, really appreciate. So being able to kind of, few things, travel, meet a lot of people, and fulfill that creativity, even if it's just for the day. Because doing corporate videos every day for a year can get boring. You're like, the creativity's going, but it's not really like skyrocketing. So like you just shooting a movie, it's like, okay, wow, that was really fun. You get to kind of spill all the creativity that you've been
pent up creativity.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of having something like Chris's short film a couple weeks ago, being able to shoot that and kind of have that to be proud of, and then be able to look forward to the next thing. And but yeah, the industry as a whole, it's like any other industry. It's an industry. Yeah. So
there's work and there's stuff to do.
Yeah, there's stuff to do and people that you don't like and all that. Nothing crazy. Yeah, office mates that you don't really care for.
The management at this company has to be in the basement at late hours filming.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Like you're a millennial, man. This is cool. Mm-hmm. Cross-generationally, it's interesting. Like I'm in my 40s, but I sometimes I forget that I'm not in my 20s. Sometimes I forget all that kind of stuff. What would you say the biggest difference is between like your philosophy and the philosophy you've observed of your parents or people my age or whatever?
It's an interesting question.
What can I mean, my generation is, what can Gen Xers, other people, learn from millennials or from you?
Interesting.
What do you got? What does Derek have to say? Forget millennials.
Yeah, forget millennials.
Millennials, you can come on the podcast. You can tell us, but I'm asking Derek.
Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, I would say, kind of on theme with the podcast, kind of like, I think there's a lot of like social movements going on that like are almost fueled by my generation, but it's also kind of, we are the product of the internet. So it's like, I grew up.
The internet had babies. You heard it.
Yeah, the internet had babies. I kind of grew up with social media started. Like, I got a Facebook when I was in middle school. I wasn't allowed to have a Facebook, but I did get one when I was in middle school. And that was kind of the beginning of middle schoolers having it, high schoolers having it, and all that stuff. Because obviously Facebook was college, and then kind of cascaded down. And obviously now it's very, very young kids having it. So I would say it's interesting to see, like, now, like, someone like my dad who is not very technology savvy, but he spends a lot of his free time on YouTube now because it's so accessible. He has it on his phone. He can watch all these things. He's finding crazy like historical documentaries that he's like just have like 700 views and can find it and all this stuff. So I would say, like, as far as the industry wise, it's interesting to see from, like, I think nowadays, especially in our industry, everyone has an iPhone. Everyone has the capability to make a video. Like, what we do is kind of special because of the equipment and because of obviously the knowledge and all that. And there's things that you can't do with an iPhone and all that. But like social media, marketing, all this stuff can be done on an iPhone in theory. And it could be done by a 6-year-old, like, because they're so exposed to it.
And they're doing it.
And they're making
millions.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's definitely interesting to see. Kind of, I'm kind of on the cusp of it, where it's like, since basically high school, that's when Snapchat started. All those things started.
Yeah.
Instagram, everything. To kind of see that kind of spill into everything, and like people your age, people older, like my parents are older than you, kind of questioning social media and being like, oh, well, how does it work? How does this work? And all that stuff. And like, maybe the disconnect between like everyone above like 35 is still on Facebook, but everyone below, it's like, ew, Facebook's disgusting. Why would I ever go on Facebook?
Yeah.
And all that stuff. And like, everyone's like, oh, I have one.
Yeah.
I don't go on it.
Yeah.
Because everything's like changing so quickly now. And I think that's kind of, I think, an interesting point too, is like our kind of industry is changing so rapidly too. It's like every year there's a new Sony camera and all this stuff happening. So
5 new Sony cameras.
Yeah, 5 new a year. So I think the rapid change is kind of interesting. It's something that people my age are used to, because everything's always changing.
Yeah.
The internet culture as a whole, it's 2 days and then we're on to the next thing. Yeah. And our attention spans are much shorter, I think, than people older.
What's like the long, like at this point in your life, like what's like the long, do you have like a long-term vision, or is it like next week, or, you know?
I mean, I have long-term vision, but I'm not one of those people that's like I'd love to see myself on like winning an Academy Award, but I'm not like expecting that to happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
So, hey, that'd be great if it happened next week, but I'm not expecting it. So I've always kind of, quote unquote, worked for the weekend kind of thing. Like I was saying, with having the next thing to look forward to. So it's like, I'm not looking forward to working every day. I'm glad that my job is not super hard and I like it a lot. So I can actually find joy in working, and I get to work with cool people and all that.
Thank you.
Yeah, sometimes. I sometimes do. But yeah, I would say I'm kind of like medium term goal minded. Yeah. Like the next big thing. What's the next big thing? What am I looking forward to doing next, you know?
Let's talk about let's dive into the religious talk. So what do you think of Jesus?
It's an interesting question. Well, I was raised Christian. Been in church basically my whole life up until I dropped out of college, basically. And yeah, so I mean, I would say a year ago I would feel much differently. Now I kind of consider myself like agnostic almost, just because I there's so many questions that could be asked, and it's just like I've had a lot of conversations, a lot of thinking about it, obviously, but like, yeah. So
what led you to say you don't know, or what agnosticism? How do you like? That's how I understand it. How do you describe your agnosticism?
I would describe it as, like you said, I don't know, and kind of like my big thing is like people, because obviously I have a lot of Christian friends. My whole family's Christian.
Does your mom know you're agnostic?
they know bits of it. They'll see this podcast and then know for sure.
Mom, he's agnostic.
Kind of. What was the question?
Does your mom?
Yeah. No.
Oh,
but now she is.
The question before that was, we think of Jesus. In between there was, how do you define? How do you define agnosticism?
I was gonna say, I kind of think that a lot of people who are Christians, because obviously that's what I'm exposed to, kind of almost put God in a box and say, I usually think about it like, if something goes your way and that you prayed for or whatever, then you're like, oh, God's working. But if it doesn't go your way, then it's not in God's will. And a lot of those things I kind of just count as like coincidence, like, well, maybe it just happened that way, and you're just kind of putting that on God. And I think I had done that for a lot of my life, and I think it kind of like people, I don't know. I think it has its positives and negatives where I often, when I have conversations like this, I say, like, when an athlete says, I want to thank God, and that's the first thing they say. I say, well, whether God's real or not, I think there's a value to saying it because you're kind of acknowledging there's something bigger than me that helped me get here. Because, like, Nick Foles doesn't win a Super Bowl by himself. There's players, there's coaches, there's his parents, his siblings, all these people down the line that helped him to get there. There's people that probably said one word to him in his life that may have helped him get there. You know, so this kind of unknown being, maybe it did help you. Or maybe it's this kind of summary of all these things happening before you were born, while you're alive, all these things happening that led you to this point, and that's how you succeeded in this thing that you're kind of facing. So that's how I've been kind of thinking about it recently. It's like all these things that people might pray for and all this stuff. It's like, oh, God really came through on this.
It's interesting. Some of the people on the podcast have asked those questions or talked about that idea of like the prayer and like God's will versus not God's will and all that stuff. But let's go a different direction on the whole idea of God. That's like prayer and things happening and answers to prayer. But what about the science angle? Like what about like the theory of I was talking to one of the people guests who were leaving, the theory of entropy and all, like there's a scientific theory about things breaking down, that everything left to itself will kind of get unorganized, it'll get chaotic, but yet there's this order to nature, luckily our planet keeps going around the sun, right? What do you think about that? What do you think about God in terms of like the bigger things? Like let's say he's not even speaking to us. Let's say
just like the creator, basically. Yeah. I mean, obviously having been raised believing creationism, I still do kind of lean that way. And obviously, like I went to public school in high school. I went to private school up until 8th grade, and in high school I went to public school. So
they told you about monkeys.
They told us all about it.
And evolution. I wasn't being like that, but maybe I was joking a little bit. Take it easy, laugh.
He's talking to nobody.
Evolutionist should laugh too. We can't all be so serious.
So, kind of thinking, being raised, being taught creationism my whole life.
Yeah.
And then going into the public school system where the theory of evolution is taught, and then kind of going home and then hearing my parents kind of babble about how terrible our public school system is and all that.
Because you just had bad schools, or because
of
evolution?
No, because of me. It's like, they can teach that, but they can't teach creation and all that. I do definitely think that the world was created, and that's why I kind of consider myself an agnostic, because it's like, I think there's something. I think there's something out there. And I think that it's kind of funny to not see, like, stand on top of a mountain and look and be like, this couldn't have just happened. There's no way that this just happened. Something had to have formed this and done something, because this is it's
interesting to me. Like there's a lot of people that might say that we're like just evolved animals, and I think the logic there's so many different directions your logic can go. Like I think about that sometimes when I'm doing bad things, and I think there's like, well, I'm just an animal with instincts, and that's how it'd be easy for me to say, like, well, it's just an animal with instincts. But I think that like there's so much order around you, and you're at the top of this food chain. At what point, you had this thought the other day, at what point did animals, if the evolution was true, at what point did animals start believing in good versus wrong, in right versus wrong?
Yeah.
You know, or at what point did animals start thinking about or creating? At what point do we start creating if this higher power is imagined and mythos and created? At what point do we start creating? You know, what happened to us, evolutionary, that we started to become creators?
Right.
You know. So there's a lot of questions I think that we're not like I'm curious to ask someone who's like really hard, who maybe even a scientist that believes in evolution, like at what point did this start to become, did we go off track of like, at what point did we go off track of just surviving and go into like this other mode of like deciding we were naked?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's kind of like to think about that is when did we start like thinking about this and building pyramids and did humans start to like be like, hey, I gotta live in the north where it's cold, I'm gonna invent clothing, and then I'm gonna have to create some kind of like god and some kind of reason that clothing exists. If that's the case, it's also like, if that's the case, why do people living at the equator wear clothes? You know? Yeah, and I think the theory where evolution breaks down in my mind is like the actual evolving of it is like if humans came from monkeys and all this kind of chain of events, it's like, well, where were the monkeys living? Was it warm? Whatever, and then how did they adapt without dying first? You know, it's like the amount of time that it would take is so crazy, and I don't know. It's just one of those things.
There's this theory of big time. There's a theory of big time, which the first time I heard of it was at this very fascinating conference called the Meta-Nexus Conference. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things that as a filmmaker, whether you're filming like a corporate event or whatever, it was this corporate event. We were hired for like 3 or 4 days to go visit it, and it was this fascinating gathering of religious people, scientists, and philosophers. Mm-hmm. And everybody was just sharing ideas, and we started off with this one guy who was like a very practicing Jew, and just giving new and unique perspectives on faith and the faith story that was told in the creation story.
Right.
And to me, it was like this. And then 2 nights later, we're hearing this like theory of big time. Like if you look at this mountain, walk up to a slice of Everest,
right,
and you say, well, it's impossible for me to just jump from like here to there.
Right.
But if you start going this way and go all the way around the earth, and it doesn't feel like a slope at all, like that's the possibility of getting up there. And so I still think it's still uphill.
Yeah.
But so it's interesting to kind of just have that dialogue and figure out and hear new perspectives and even hear. And I think that there's this like dichotomy right now in America, in the world, where you have to be one or the other, and you can't be this like thinking person.
Yeah, and I also think like the idea of evolving is not like, you can't say that things don't evolve. It's like, well, yeah, there are different species of things, and like things evolve, not in the way, like I don't think it's in the way that over 1 million years they become another thing or they kind of branch off and whatever, but it's like certain things do happen, and it's like kind of one thing leads to another, and it's not a drastic change, but it's small, and things are kind of evolving, you know. It's like
Dr. Bob Leahy, what wasn't his name? Bob? Dr. Leahy at Lehigh University. Lehigh?
Maybe.
I'm probably still wrong.
Lehigh at Lehigh University.
Yeah, somebody's got it right. But anyway, this gentleman we had a chance of filming, and the fact that he was talking about as a geneticist seeing the de-evolution of a certain kind of fish that lived in darkness, that didn't need an eye anymore because there's nothing to see. Right. And so that over time, that eye went away. But seeing something that is going to change, like if that fish is surviving, why does it need to develop legs and crawl out, you know. But
Right, yeah.
I don't know, it's very interesting to think about those, like, and that doesn't that go against the theory of entropy?
Yeah.
Doesn't it go against the theory that says that things left to their own end in chaos?
Right.
You know, so I think the fact that there is order around is, to me, a testament that there's something else out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, I mean, I would definitely, I believe that there's something out there. I don't really know what it is, but yeah, I think there's something. And I think part of my thinking and kind of recent thinking is like the idea that we can comprehend anything, that if there was a God who created the universe, that we could even try to describe anything of what he felt, thought, did, anything, is like ridiculous. Like you can't do that. And that's also kind of a problem that I see. It's like, oh well, God does this, and I'm like, you can't. There's no way that you could comprehend that.
So what would you think that God would want to communicate with us? I mean, like with the idea, you know, what do you think? Back to the question, what do you think about Jesus? Like, what do you think about the story of Jesus?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I definitely would say that. Again, it's like one of those things that it's like I just don't know. So the way I kind of think about it is, at the end of the day, whether he was the Son of God or just some crazy guy, I mean, as far as we know,
can he be both?
Yeah,
Son of God, yeah. Crazy guy, one wild and crazy guy. All those miracles.
Kind of having.
Not looking. Here's what's crazy.
Right when you laughed, I knew you were gonna say something.
We're gonna be half.
Yeah.
Here's what's crazy about if Jesus is the Son of God. Here's what's crazy about him. I think it's crazy about him is he didn't go after power.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what annoys me about the church right now.
Yeah.
Even myself, right? Is I'll go after power. Like control.
Yeah.
Like, and to me, that's the story, truth or mythos, as one of our podcast guests puts it, of a guy going, you know, like being like, I don't want power. I'm trying to create a kingdom based on no power.
Right.
That is crazy.
Yeah, it is a little crazy. But I mean, I think that as a historical figure, he taught peace and he taught love and humility and all things that, whether you believe that he's the Son of God or not, you should still, I think everyone should strive for. Like, the Bible is not, like, if you don't believe it, it's not like any of the parables or the stories or the lessons become any less applicable to your life. It's like the 10 Commandments is not something that you should like just ignore. It's like, yeah, you shouldn't kill people. You shouldn't.
I don't believe. I don't kill people. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, you should honor your father and mother and all those things.
It's okay. I slept with your wife.
Yeah.
I don't believe in the Bible.
I don't believe in the Bible. Sorry, pastor.
Sorry, pastor. Weird.
Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, Christian or not, believer or not, it's still kind of good thing. So I'm at the point where I'm like, I had this conversation recently with a friend of mine, saying kind of, if this is the way I see things, and it might just be me being cynical and like this is the way I think, but like if God did exist and created us in his image, then why, it's the classic, why do bad things happen to good people? And I like you were talking about with Sue and Andrew, like kind of, well, the way I see it is like, if he created us and all that, then why would he allow things to happen to his creation and kind of just, I mean, as far as I understand in the Bible, it's like whenever something like sin enters the world, whatever, he allows Satan to do it, is what I understand. So if he created the universe knowing all that would happen, why would he let Satan become Satan in the first place? Because he was a fallen angel and all that. So why would he, one, let that happen, two, let Eve be tempted and Adam be tempted, and then everything that's happened since then? Like,
I'll be honest.
Be honest.
After this break. You had mentioned the devil.
Yes.
To hell with the devil. The stripper. Shout out. The one thing that I look at, and you know, it's interesting that, you know, some of the stuff. So I wrote this movie called What the Halo, and what I found the Christian audience doing right away was saying, like, well, that's not right. The theology of angels is not right. And I was like, first off, your vocabulary is completely wrong.
Yeah.
There is no theology of angels. Angels may play into the theology of God, study of God, but you're talking about angelology. And what I found interesting, you were talking about the devil and get kicked out of heaven and all that stuff. Morning star. There's all these like very obscure passages that lead us to the devil, and there's some other apocryphal stuff that's in there. I just find that some of the theology, I could be educated more. I'd love to have someone who's more versed in angelology, or theology, including how angels relate to God on the show, because I think that I could use a little education there about what is up. But I think that's one thing that's out there that I can say I don't know about.
Yeah, I think
is the devil and all that kind of stuff. Like
anyone trying to say how angels work or anything is like, so it's kind of crazy. Like I definitely believe that in this new way of thinking that I have newly achieved. I definitely
congratulations.
Thank you.
Gold star on your new achievement.
My new achievement. I definitely believe that there are like angels, demons, I would say forces of good and evil kind of in the world. So yeah, but like to even begin to comprehend them is.
I have a friend I met at we met. Did you meet her at Sundance Festival that speaks to angels? I
remember that.
Yeah,
I don't know what that was.
Hey, you have a podcast. Yeah. We should have you on the show. It'd be fun.
Yeah.
I'll look her up. It was kind of cool. Yeah. We had some good spiritual conversations going on.
Yeah.
I think there's a what I find interesting. I was having this conversation with Andrew years ago. Right. When I say years ago, I mean like a year and a half. That what's fascinating about the divide in what different people believe in things is one person will be like, oh, I don't believe in Christianity, but there are ghosts haunting my house, and you know, and like and that's fine. You can not believe in Jesus and believe in ghosts, but I feel like there's this like cleansing now and these border walls of like, I don't believe in the big man in the sky you can talk to, but I do believe in the spirit world. Yeah, and crystals. And crystals, yeah. So I think there's a lot of, we could do each other some love. We could, if you believe in Jesus, love other people by listening to them and letting them have their time to talk and educate you about what they believe. Yeah. And then you would have more chance to educate them about what you believe. Yeah. I think that is... It's lacking that we don't listen to each other, and we don't listen to ourselves. And sometimes, sometimes you're like, you know what? So I was staying in a friend's house, and she was like, we get up in the morning, and she's like, hey, were you visited by the little boy? And I was like, a little boy came in my room. Like, that's sorry, that's not right. And so she was telling these stories about of how she renovated this old farmhouse, and she found out that there was. This young boy died tragically there in an explosion, like 100 years ago, and how like multiple guests have like seen this boy like in the bedroom. And I was like, and it's for me, as a guy who believes in the Holy Spirit, can I also believe in unholy spirits and other things and things that are in the Bible? There's demons in the Bible and all that kind of stuff. Like, is my brain open enough to accept that she's not crazy?
Yeah.
And for telling me this story, and other people telling these stories, and people that believe that, can they open their mind enough to believe that I'm not crazy?
Right.
For believing in a Holy Spirit and a Son and a Father and all that kind of stuff, and a Creator. So I think that to me, I think is what I'd like to see more of is more dialogue like this, where there's more where we're bringing spirituality to the surface, not to necessarily to prove anybody wrong, because the truth will be proved right or wrong because it's the truth.
And kind of going back to, we're not talking about this religion-wise, but kind of the divide of age groups. I think that nowadays, like kind of harking back to social media, people my age and a little older and obviously younger, kind of, I think it's positive and negative, but are kind of hesitant to really speak their mind in political, religious, all the ways that are divisive and all that, which I think is partly good, because there are people in my life that will be like, oh, these idiots who believe evolution, they're all stupid, and how could you believe that you come from monkeys and all that stuff, and at the same time are laying hands on people, praying for people, which to the person who thinks we came from monkeys could be like, wow, look at this idiot trying to heal somebody with their bare hands. What? Like, it's not obviously not going to work.
Yeah.
So it's like this kind of same thing where
those kind of
self-awareness.
Those kind of people should believe in like Reiki massage or whatever the massage that you don't touch them.
You don't touch them at all.
I was like, I don't want that kind of massage. Lay some hands on me, lady. I want some hands.
Yeah. So kind of thinking about it that way. So the positive of that is kind of being able to have this type of discussion where you say, oh, well, we don't have the exact same beliefs, but what you're saying is interesting. Can I counterpoint by saying this? Oh, that's interesting. May I counterpoint by saying that? And you just kind of have this discussion. Like, I've had, I can't really think of anyone like that is a few generations older than me that I would be able to have this type of discussion with, where you kind of have to think outside the box and have to be very open-minded in saying, okay, you have a completely different lifestyle than me, completely different religion, political views, all that, but at the end of the day, we're just human beings. And I think we're kind of, as a species, finally getting over that, where it's like really putting away our differences and kind of breaking down borders and breaking down not like physical and kind of spiritual, all the borders that we've kind of put up are kind of, I think nowadays everyone's so exposed to everything that like she's like, yeah, it's normal. Like 300 years ago, you were only around people of your own race. So you see somebody of another race, we know what happens. It's not great. But nowadays, we're so, especially in America, we're so exposed to religions, races, everything, that it's just kind of, I think, the right direction of kind of, you're exposed to so much that how could you not kind of almost tolerate everything and just say, oh, well, we're all different, and that's okay.
What should you not tolerate?
That's a good question. I mean, I would say basically whatever your compass of right and wrong is kind of, I think as a society we've figured it out. Obviously we have laws and all that, and there's things that aren't illegal but are still kind of jerk moves and all that. So
don't tolerate jerk moves.
No jerk moves.
No jerk moves.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would say that kind of stuff. And I think I as I've kind of gotten further and further away from religion, I've started to think about like karma more and more, and I think I'm kind of adopting that philosophy of like what goes around comes around, which I don't think is like, I think Christians would be like, oh well, karma's not real, all that stuff, but it's also like, you know, in the Bible it says you reap what you sow, right? and like all that. So I think it's not a crazy principle. I think that kind of is how the world works. It's like you put a lot of negativity in the world. I don't think in the end it's not going to work out too well for you. So yeah, I think people are kind of learning that more and more. Hopefully learning that more and more. You know.
All right. Well, this has been another episode of the Christians that drink whiskey and their open-minded friends.
Yep.
Podcast here on Funny&Amen, Patreon,
and in their basement,
and in my basement.
Yeah.
Tune in, keep tuning in, and thanks for being a patron, and thanks for watching. Thanks, Derek, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for always being here behind the camera. Don't get behind the camera.
Yeah. I don't have a choice.
That's a jerk move. Sorry.
We don't tolerate that.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.